is a 66 Belvedere that Troy turned out back in 2015. It's made its way back into the shop for a fresh coat of paint, and I thought it might be worth showing this car because it set a couple of records. This car is an absolute monster, and its 4,800 pound heft didn't keep it from running sub 10-second quarter times at a drag week, which means not only did it have to get itself there, it still had to do the race as well. Very impressive stuff. And when it comes to the standing mile, this car has gone over 208 miles an hour despite its 4,800 pound heft and limited tire size. And it did all that thanks to its twin turbocharged Hemi. It won't be setting any records here today though, because there's no engine. The engine is getting completely redone, and when it comes back, trust me, I'll be taking it out for a drive. But for now, the priority is to get it out of the paint shop and make room for one of Troy's new creations. I took the opportunity to help my buddy Alex out by welding up a fuel tank for his personal project, a notchback Mustang. So you gotta ask yourself, what the hell's wrong with a guy who builds hot rods all week and then goes home and builds a hot rod in the evenings? And that's the case with Alex. He's building a 65 Mustang, and this is the gas tank out of that car, and it's being modified to accept a fuel pump and a different sending unit and things like that because it's fuel injected. So Troy worked out a deal with Alex where he was going to weld the tank, and that translates to I don't really cost any money because I'm not getting a paycheck, so somehow now I'm doing this. And this is a 22 gauge stainless tank. This is pretty difficult stuff to weld. I once met a girl who's a professional welder that told me there is no such thing as things that are hard to weld. I disagree with her. I'm not as talented as she is apparently, but I'm going to stand by that. So what I really think is they're expecting me to fail and they're going to laugh at me. And speaking of people who've built cars, Moose has built a couple. Even though he builds hot rods, he still went through that. Not me though. Once I hang up the old apron for the day, I go home and watch TV. So some of the things to consider here is the fact that the patch panel is actually cut out of a slightly thicker metal. So there's got to be a decision made as to which metal is going to sit on top of the other one. And I've chosen to make this thicker piece, the patch panel, sit this way on top of this metal essentially. We're still going for a butt weld, but you got to kind of split the difference between the thicknesses. So that's what I'm doing right now. And the idea is to just get it all tacked in and then go back and start adding more weld, which is going to increase the shrinking, which is going to mean that there'll probably be some hammer and dolly action going on. Thank you. He's in my head. Come on, Cougar. Come on, Cougar, focus on the flight deck. I can't, Mav. I can't, he's in my head. Dickhead. If I had employees, I'd be fucking nice to him. That's real good for steady hands. So here the patch panel's a little oversized, and I was okay with that. I mean, it kind of intentionally did that because once it gets so close to just being barely oversized, the next step is to take too much away. And then you've got a piece that keeps wanting to fall in the tank, or you're trying to make a, weld the difference between a giant gap. So I'll go back now and take away a little bit of material until it relaxes and finds its place in between the base metal and the gap that'll be there soon. Too bad we don't have a tool sponsor. I sure would like to sing the praises of some of the equipment I've used today. What's probably best for the tank is that I go ahead and back purge the inside of the tank, so basically push all the oxygen out and replace it with something like argon, which is inert, and that'll keep any sugaring from happening to the back of the weld. It'll just make for a nicer product, especially on a gas tank. You don't want a bunch of particulates and debris falling down in, especially not when they're as hard as a piece of stainless, because that could really ruin an engine's day. And then I was thinking, well, that's going to cost a little extra because you're using the extra gas, you're using tape, lots of it. And then I just found solace in the fact that Troy's paying for all of it, so who cares? I'll just do what's best for the gas tank. Troy, I'm using extra tape. There's lots of it.
How'd the patch come out on the other?
It's all right. Just can't stand how inconsistent the thin shit is.
Yeah.
I make excuses all day long, but
No, it's good.
it ain't gonna leak. But
How many fingers am I holding up?
four.
Now you got to metal finish it.
Yeah.
That's what I did on that other one. When I patched it, that square, I did do it.
See, that's the deal. You had a square
Okay.
to work with.
No, that'll work.
You got digested from the wrong end.
That's what happens when you're in the movie industry too long.
I know. Do you want me to go back anywhere, Dolly?
No. Hell, I don't. I don't give a It's the L's thing. This won't be. This should hold it from sinking. There's a little bit of shape in here. It should hold it from sinking.
Hope so. This time around, there were a number of odd projects going on.
This is a mock-up piece of what it actually is going to wind up looking like, and this is just going to saddle in and take the place of that, and this will be all out of 1 5/8 tube.
Gary was working on a Kiwi Indian replica because the tailpipe was in the way of the Kickstarter. So he was given the task of creating a new tailpipe that would look great and not be in the way this time. Rick was firming up the trunk lid on a Kugel 32. And with all of that going on, the next big thing to come out of Rad Rides is progressing quite nicely. The 41 Fleetline has been getting a lot of attention in its stripped down state. Most shops would just hand it off to the body shop and move on to another project, but this is where the car really gets attention to detail. Earlier in the build, I talked to Adam about plans for getting the interior done.
So on the car itself, we're past all the major fabrication, the removable panels, all the doors have been modified, the hood, everything. And so now we're to the point where we're doing the details that have to do with prepping it to go to the body shop, making sure all of our panel alignment's nice, which we had to do for the doors in the first place.
You got it, trust me.
And we're doing our final fabrication and installation of things for the sake of upholstery work at this point, which I think is another advantage here, is that we're doing all the upholstery work in-house, and so all the fabricators that work here have upholstery experience as well, but the fact that we do it, we can put a lot of things in place that otherwise maybe you wouldn't think about if you weren't the one that was going to have to do it later.
Definitely.
And like Troy always tells me, don't worry about that. That's the interior guy's problem. Yeah, well,
That's you.
That's me. Yeah. So I'm going to do everything I can to put it in place so that when we do get.
It's really not that big of a deal.
You're blowing the scene here, bud. It is a big deal. Just ask them.
So some of the things that we're doing now, we have the door seal mocked in place now. This tack strip will go up here and attach just offset from where this flange at the seal sits. So this sits just up here. The headliner comes down, staples to this tack strip, but we need a place to land the new garnish molding that goes between this lip of the seal and the headliner. So these tabs are going to get welded in between the two, so that a screw can go in between the seal and the headliner.
Oh my God.
So that we don't have an extra tall garnish molding to get the screw up here where there's a hollow above the door. So all those things are taken into account. There's a little notch in the B-pillar here where that tack strip comes down as far as where the headliner stops.
Oh my God.
And then the headliner actually gets glued around this quarter window, and it has a modified original bezel that goes around here that will mimic the shape of that for the door.
Just this ledge here is just, even that's a,
Yep.
wow.
And so that's recessed a little bit into the pillar so that this panel coming across here, because the headliner just floats across this flange and gets stapled inside here, then I'll have a molding that finishes this out, but the level of this is flush with that so that the headliner doesn't have this little ripple in it.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah.
How do you guys sleep at night?
I don't.
Okay, that makes sense. I really think you guys have thought of everything.
We'll find some things we didn't.
I'm sure, but golly, I mean, the bucket of stuff that you've considered is a pretty full one.
Yeah.
The interior isn't going anywhere until the paint is done, though. And Warren and his crew are all over it. Of course, starting with a primer. Before the paint and clear coat are applied, the pieces of trim are actually sanded with the car while it's in primer. Now the trim pieces are coated in copper, which is a process that happens before they're chrome plated, almost kind of a primer of their own. When the pieces are sanded together, it makes for a fit and finish that's out of this world. There's hardly any transition between the body panels and the trim when following these steps. While the paint and bodywork was going on, Adam took the opportunity to start building the new seats for the car. It's not uncommon for a hot rod interior to look really great and state-of-the-art, but oftentimes it's just a bunch of leather and foam covering pieces of plywood and fiberglass. That's not the case at Rad Rides. Adam actually reconstructs the seats in what I would call kind of a circa 1960s way. He uses springs, he uses metal frames, and actually builds a comfortable seat from scratch. While out of the car, they're a completely standalone subcomponent, much like an engine if it were out of the car. It takes a completely unique set of understanding to build a seat from scratch. It's no simple task. Casey jumped in by building the center console. There again, this is where most hot rods fall short because they're constructed of plywood and fiberglass or other materials that don't stand the test of time like metal does. Not to mention, it's usually like a hot rod builder is trying to make a fashion statement with the center console. So the goal is to keep it functional and understated, but to look elegant and fit the car. This requires a lot of transitions and reverse curves that are hard things to get out of a piece of metal. I'm sure Zach from Z-Rods was a welcome sight when he came in with a reworked plenum for the 41's power plant. The original one had way too much branding on it and just looked silly. Zach's done a lot of the heavy lifting because Lawrence is pretty much running the CNC machines that Troy has 24 hours a day. Zach catches the overflow.
I'll grab a valve cover, just one of them. I think I got the gasket pulled out of one on the rack back there. We'll just see what it looks like with that on there.
We pulled out the valve covers that Lawrence made and were able to see how the parts look together. And I'd say they nailed it. Let's take this opportunity to flash forward just a little bit here. It takes a long time to get this stuff done, and we only have so much time in an episode. So, I'll start off by saying once all the trim was squared away and the bodywork was finished, it was time to get to painting. The painted body was brought back to the main shop for final assembly. And with a fresh powder coating of its own, so was the chassis. If you've been watching the show, every other time you've seen the car prior to this, it's always been fully assembled, so it's nice to get a look at some of the really detailed things that you were able to see with the engine out. Like these little pockets in the frame, they're CNC machined, and I haven't seen that anywhere else. It's just a really sharp way to do it. So they're actually bulkhead fittings, and then the lines run inside of the frame rail, so you don't have them all over the place, and they're carrying things like brake fluid and fuel or whatever. It just looks really detailed. And if you look at the suspension here, some of it is store-bought, for lack of a better term. So you've got a stock C6 lower control arm, and then you have, like I said, a store-bought drop spindle here. They took the advantage of that for the lower ride height and then the geometry correction that does. But basically, this is all the same geometry that you would have with a C6 Corvette, which is a proven thoroughbred. Then they make all the adjustments they need so that it accommodates the 41's weight and style and everything else. That comes into play with like the upper control arm, for example. This has been machined in-house to accommodate the spring that they want to run for this car. And then when you look here at the steering arm, they actually had to make these as well, because if they didn't, the relationship from that to the steering rack would actually have the potential for causing bumps here. All of that comes into play, and it's very important. That way these cars actually perform as good as they look. And that comes from just decades of experience and trial and error. Lots of error, because Al's been involved, right, Al? Huh? Lots of error. You ready to put it in now? I'll get out of your way. All right, let's do it. The best time to install an engine and transmission is on a clean chassis with no body. So that is what Alex and I did. Adam's seat frames were done and waiting to be upholstered by Adam, but he's got plenty of other work to do. He had to continue to make all of the other interior panels and make room for the speaker enclosure that's going to hold the subwoofer behind the back seat.
So one of the things I'm working on, I made the brackets for hanging the components here. We have an amplifier. I'm making the sub enclosure right now. We have a single sub. We're not trying to, blast them out of the car or anything like that, but it just fills out the sound a little bit. So right now I'm just fitting this in here, making sure my tabs and everything line up with the structure that's in place. I'll go weld some of this stuff on the bench, and then I should have the sub tomorrow. I can cut the hole for that and finish welding the ends up.
The center console was ready to be fitted, and that had Casey going back and forth making fine adjustments.
We'll bolt the frame to the car. These side panels will be upholstered, they'll be wrapped in leather, and then the centerpiece that I'm gonna have to make will be painted. Right now I'm just making it to where this whole unit with the chassis, the side panels, all that stuff can come out of the car. I can build it as much as possible on the bench, and then when it's all said and done, we can just come right in, bolt it. It's easy to install because we can install in pieces, and just gives you a little bit of a variety as far as how to finish it with the leathers and the paints and all that stuff, and it's something we like to do here. Just make a couple adjustments on this and then go back to the bench. Alright, so basically what I'm doing right now is adding this flange for this top side panel. This piece will be wrapped in leather, so this panel will be coming up. It'll wrap over the top of the center portion. The center panel I've already done. I already ran that through the machine. We basically stamped this radiused edge, kind of gave it a little bit more dimension, and give it a little bit of depth and just overall style.
I noticed Adam assembling the trunk panels, and I figured I'd roll in for a closer look. Troy was showing me pictures of the trunk earlier, and they're pretty freaking awesome. Just like the Cadillac trunk, the metalwork is stupendous. So I asked Adam if he'd put it all together. Actually, the camera guy did, but Adam was kind enough to humor him.
Gracious.
What do you got going here? Trying to think of a new word here instead of difficult, but man, your brain was really cooking to bend these panels around like that. And these pieces are just beautiful. What thickness is that? Like 60 thousandths, or is it thinner?
This is all 60 thousandths.
Okay.
Typically, all the interior panels that we do are 60. It's thin enough and light enough that you can form it, but it's still aluminum, so it's rigid. You can put the panels on and off, 1,000 times, and it's still not going to be a problem. They're very durable. So
Very
back
cool.
here, really the only thing on the back side here that I needed any clearance at all for were these tail light buckets. The lower bucket for the light interfered with this panel a little bit, so I just put a little dimple
You
in
did
there.
have to, pocket it. I didn't know if that was, for
Yep,
practicality or
clearance for the bucket just down at the bottom. And the other thing is, I made these panels in such a way so that these come out first if you're taking it apart. So if you have to service this tail light, you have 4 screws in here, and this whole panel comes out so you can get to the back side without having to take all the rest of it out.
Cool. The panels inside the trunk were as much a functional work of art as the rest of the car. I couldn't stay to watch the rest of the progress unfold, but I did come back a few weeks later. And this is what I found. Now you can get a better idea of what the final product is going to look like. I love seeing all the pieces off of the car. Even though they're finished and ready to go on, it really gives you the ability to sit back and appreciate just how detailed each part is. With the trim going on the body, it really starts to paint the whole picture of just how elegant this car is going to look. The colors and the textures all make so much sense and really work well together. Take the grille or the wheels, for example, as they're almost completed. They're not just nickel plated and then thrown on the car. There's actually a lot of other colors and textures that get involved. Each piece has an entire process attached to it. It really helps with the detailed look of the car. But I'd come up for something completely different. A well-kept secret that I've been following since I started this show. A potential record-setting flathead. Perhaps the world's most powerful and naturally aspirated flathead. And not only did we see it being built, we made a 36-hour drive to the Bonneville Salt Flats to see if it would set a record. And you gotta see this on the next episode of Rad Rides.